Hi, I am Ash Knight, and I am the author of the Romance Stay, and I'm here with Isaac Grisham, who is the narrator for the audiobook version of Stay. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Great, it's the weekend.
We're going to interview each other just about the fun time we had creating this audiobook. So my first question for you, Isaac, is why did you say yes when I asked you to narrate?
You caught me off guard when you did. I remember the Twitter messages coming up, and it's in the middle of a work day, and there was snow falling outside, and at first I was like, she's messaged the wrong person. I was like, okay, well, but why did I say yes?
Well, I remember you were like, why are you asking me?
Right. I know that a friend of mine had put an audio clip online of, from a passage of my book. And I'm like, you're sure you're not mistaking me for this other person, right? Because that's not me.
I know who you're talking about.
What's that?
I know who you're talking about.
Um,
Well, the dog's there.
the dog's there. But why did I say yes? I mean, we already spent, the majority of that year at home in quarantine. And I was finishing up work on my current, book project, and I'm always up for a challenge. And I had never done any narration before, seriously. So, and it's been an industry that I've had an eye on already. I listen to audiobooks all the time, so I was up for the challenge. Absolutely.
Awesome. I'm glad you did.
No, so did I. I learned so much over the course. Because what was it, like October-ish that you reached out
Yeah.
in that area? Then I finished the project up in April. So I mean, I learned a lot during that,
Yeah.
5 6 months, so much. So you say yes, yeah, sure, I mean, totally, it's going to be totally easy. And like everything from the recording to the editing to the mastering to, I mean, you say yes, but you have no idea what all goes into it.
It's a lot of hours.
It is like for an 8.5 hour book, it's like dozens of hours of work put into it.
I know. That's what I always ask narrators too. I'm like, how many for the finished hours of like 10 hours, how much time do you actually put into it? And it's like to get like 1 hour of finished is like 6 or 7 hours. And I'm like, it's probably more than that, actually.
May have ended up for me like 6 or 7 hours per hour in the end, but at the beginning it was like, oh my god, I have no idea what I'm doing. It was a lot more than that at first.
Did you spend all of the narrating time in the closet?
Yes. The quietest part of my house ended up being in my closet. So I set up a little fort with blankets everywhere to cut off the sound. And unfortunately, even that closet is facing the outside of the house. So I would hear, especially as spring began to come around, I would hear birds or chipmunks or the snow and ice scraping off of my roof. And so it wasn't the quietest place. And at first I was like, oh, my library has soundproof recording rooms. And so when I said yes to the project, they were still open, but shortly afterwards they closed due to COVID. So
yeah, that's awesome.
but yes, a lot of time spent in the closet. So going back, to when you reached out to ask me, what made you seek me out for that?
So originally I had hired somebody from ACX to do it, and then it just fell apart and they didn't end up recording anything. And so I was like, maybe I shouldn't do it at all. And then I was like, well, maybe I should find somebody that's like trying to get into narration, or somebody that's not very popular. Because I was listening to the other um, auditions that I'd gotten, and I didn't like any of them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Joe has like a specific voice in my head, and so I was kind of at the point where I was just like, forget it, it's never gonna happen. And then I saw something, I can't remember, you tweeted something at some point, and then I was like, he made that video where he was reading his book that he wrote in, like, what was it, when you were like back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went back and listened to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's totally Joe right there. Like, I don't care what Madden sounds like, but that's like Joe. And so that's why I reached out to you.
Wow. So did you like the way I did Joe's voice?
Yes. Yeah. I don't think I was ever like, he needs to be a little more of this or whatever. I was like, just do that.
No, I really enjoyed. I think Joe's voice was my favorite.
Yeah.
In the interpretations.
Yeah, it was so good. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I have to ask you, were you ever like cringing when you were like narrating any part of it?
Cringing, like in what way?
Anyway.
Anyway.
Or was there ever a part where you were like, oh, I can't wait to get to this chapter, or that was work, you know what I mean?
There were a few times where I was looking, because I'd read the book before I did any of the narration, and there were, a few parts that I looked forward to doing, like the whole point at, the whole visit to the zoo was a really charming scene to me. So yeah, there were a few times that, because when you're writing a book, you have certain scenes in mind where you're writing towards. Like, I want to get to this one scene, so I'm not going to write it right away. I'm going to write up to it so I can get to it and enjoy it. And I think that zoo scene was one of those things for me. There were a couple of sweet moments between Madden and Joe that were very similar to that. Cringing, me, like, we would get to like a sex scene and it'd be all like, oh my God, now I got to pull this off. Like, and I did so many takes because I would be like, they would do something. I'd be like, okay, did that sound like me going, oh, they're having sex now? Ooh, or what, was it,
I would have no idea.
Or did it seem right? Yeah. Did it sound? I listened to it many times for you, but like, it was not cringy like, oh, but like cringy like, oh my God, I gotta do this and make it sound natural or not hokey. Because there are some sex scenes in the books that I have written too, and I think again, my friend did a narration of one of them, and I was the same way that you were, where I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can listen to this because, but actually it ended up being very good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And sometimes those, when you're like cringing at yourself or cringing at a scene that you're kind of afraid to do, it ends up being one of the better ones. I'm not saying
I haven't found that. I also wanted to ask you, has your dad listened to it yet?
I have not actually told him that it's come out, but yes, my dad has asked, let me know when the book is out. I would love to, him and his wife would love to listen to it. And I was like, okay, like you do know what it's about, right? Like, you're going to be listening to your son narrate, a good book, but also with some very, explicit sex scenes in there.
Fine, it's fine.
I know.
I'm embarrassed for myself that your dad is even.
It's like just imagining listening to, a loved one, a brother or a sister, even, like, going through these, some of these scenes. You're like, that is cringeworthy right there. That makes me go, yee.
Right. So do your parents, have they read your books?
Yes, they have.
Okay. My parents have not.
No,
No, they have no interest.
no interest in it.
No,
Yeah, so
no, none whatsoever.
now my parents are supportive, of that. They've always have been. I've been writing, since I was a little kid. They've always been very supportive of that. Um, and even up until this audiobook, both my parents were all like, "Great, go for it, go do it, and let us know how it goes." And yeah,
Awesome. So are you trying to get into narrating then more
I
after
would
this?
definitely like to, for sure. Definitely want to um, leave the closet, step out of the closet
Yeah,
before I narrate another one. But yeah, I really did enjoy the process, and I'd like to put those skills to work more.
yeah,
Uh, See, my thought there was, wait till Stay comes out and see what people think with that one. Yeah, so no, I enjoyed it. I'd like to do it again.
good. I think you'd be really good at it. Would you want to do like a specific genre rather than like romance?
Um, I, probably could do, my books are all fantasy so
Hmm.
far. I could probably do something like that just because that's where my mind is the most.
Right.
But anything from, something fantasy or sci-fi to romance or, more contemporary. Absolutely.
That's good. That'd be fun. I think you'd be good at it. I mean, I like your voice.
Thank you. Um, so going back to, you said that there was definitely certain scenes that you did not listen to.
Yes.
Uh, but how hard was it for you to
Impossible.
how hard was it for you to listen to the book in general? Your own words
Impossible.
written to you or being read to you.
It was terrible. It was like torture. And I don't know why. I honestly like the next book I wrote, I feel like if I did that in audio, it wouldn't be so, I don't know. It's just like for some reason this book is so like vulnerable to me. It makes me very vulnerable. I don't know. I think it's just because Joe, his character is so much a part of like my son with the autism aspect and me like just how I am with things in general. And then just like the worst part of like family life. And it's just, I don't know. It's just like his character is super close to me. And so I think that's why I just can't, like, I hate like reading it. I have a hard time even just reading it. So, but it was so important to me to have the audiobook come out. And I don't know why. I just like needed it to be an audio. So,
That was a passion project of yours.
yes. I did listen to a lot of it.
It's like a good 60% of it.
A good 12 minutes.
The intro that you got in the beginning.
I listened to like all of the parts that weren't like super, I guess, deep conversations between them. Once it got there, like I just had to fast forward it. But you were on the right track.
Yeah, you were doing good.
Looks good.
No, but like I can understand. I think most authors have an initial hesitancy to hear those words, your own written words read to you. Um, I
Yeah.
don't think it's uncommon at all. Um, it's almost like hearing your own voice. Like we talk all the time, but then we hear ourselves in the recording and our brain goes, blah, what is that? That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Uh, Very similar, I think, to hear your own words read to you, and it just creates this uncomfortable feeling. Um, but again, I think it's something we all got to get past. I know I had to, especially listening to my voice over and over for dozens of hours. I got very used to it. I got over that cringe factor right away.
I don't know how authors narrate their own books. Like that would be too much for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't narrate your second book?
No. No. I can't even like watch a video of myself. Like I'll never be able to watch this.
Just gonna
So I
post
don't
it.
know.
No editing there. So so there were several settings in Stay. You had like not Joe's. Well, you had Joe's tent. You had Madden's apartment. You had a zoo. My favorite was the coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what was kind of like the inspiration behind any of those settings, but especially the coffee shop? And I want to know, is it based off of a real place? Because I love coffee and I would totally go there.
Nope. I don't even drink coffee. I know. Once in a while, I will drink an iced Americano, but that's it. I don't really drink coffee on the regular. So I've never been to Portland. I've never been to Chicago.
You've never been to Chicago?
No. I know, right? So for the Portland Zoo, I just looked it up online and saw like the map and all the animals that they had and all of that. So that's how I just researched what was there and like how they would go. But yeah, the coffee shop I just made up just from like what I would assume like a place where people would want to actually go and sit and hang out and like moms would group together and hang out with their kids for like an hour, or you know what I mean, like just a nice dark wooden comfortable space. So
No, that's when I actually read the book. I liked the setting. The wood, all the very comfortable, the smells that you described. It was like,
yeah,
I love a breakfast. I love sweets. I would totally hang out in this coffee shop.
right. I'm all about like breakfast and sweets too.
Going back to what you said about you never been to either Portland or Chicago. Um, I remember again going back to when you first asked me to do the project, and I was like, okay, let me read the blurb or about it. I'm like, oh, I see it takes place in Portland. And my first thought was, I don't have a accent from the West Coast. Like I can't pull off now. But then I'm like, both of these characters originally grew up in Chicago, or at least the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I obviously have a very Midwestern accent, which I really did not know I had until I think a few times someone said Chicago. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh, they went to Chicago. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, Chicago, like that's so Midwestern. Like, oh yeah, I definitely have a Midwestern accent.
Yeah.
But I said it was okay because both of these characters originally came from the area here. So
Yeah.
I let it go. I was gonna try to pull off a Portland accent for you.
I don't even know what that is.
I think
It's fine.
I think it's pretty distinct, but
At least they weren't from Jersey.
right, right. I think me trying to pull off any type of accent, I mean, like I had a hard enough time trying to differentiate all the different voices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you about that and I forgot. Was that hard?
It was, yes. And I did Joe's story first, Joe's point of view first,
Right.
and then I went back and did Madden's. So there were some characters that would crop up every once in a while. So what was the coffee shop owner's name?
Lulu.
Lulu. So I did all of Lulu's very early on. I just went through the entire book and just completed all her dialogue. And then I decided that was taking too long, so I went ahead and just did everybody else's at the time it was, coming across the pages. But that, but every time I would come across like Madden's friend Adam,
Yeah.
like I would come across Adam, I'd be like, okay, I need to go back and listen to his voice again because I've kind of forgotten. Like, oh, did I give him like a dumb jock type voice, or did I
Yeah.
give very loud, very quick, very like I'd be like, I need to go back and do it again and practice it again. Um, but between Joe and Madden, no, I thought those are very easy to do and differentiate. There was a point though in March where I got COVID. I got very sick and I had a sore throat for several weeks. And I'm like, I can't just, stop doing this. So there was a point, I think it was during when I was narrating Madden's story.
Mhm.
There's a point where where I was sick, but I was still doing this. I was still going into the closet and recording it. It was taking longer because I would listen to it. I can hear where I'm getting very hoarse. I need to go back and do this part again.
That's
But
awful.
I don't think anyone's gonna notice that. So
Well, in the 2 reviews, no one has said anything.
yes, okay. There was a part in these couple chapters where it got really hoarse. Yeah, no.
I've listened to audiobooks where I've noticed when somebody's been sick,
Yeah,
and it's just like very obvious. And I'm like, why? But it's been very obvious. And see, I listened to at least some of all of the chapters, and I didn't notice anything.
good, good, good. I learned like very early on. I realized that there's a click, you know, in my voice, like probably the movement of my tongue. Um, and I know I talked to you about it a little bit, where I was like, oh yeah, I have all these clicks, and you're like, I never noticed it at all. I was like, neither did I at first until I started hearing it, and then I couldn't not hear it. And it was just click, 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 click. Especially during that time where I was sick, it was just click. I'm like, oh my god, this is terrible. And that was the hardest part of editing. Was like narrating it was fine, editing it together was fine. It was then going back in and listening to every paragraph, every sentence, and going, okay, there's 3 clicks here. I gotta get that out of there. That was the painstaking, time-consuming part of the entire process.
So did you just have to edit all of that out, or did you redo it?
No, I edited it all out. Yep. Every sentence, I'd be like, yep, there's a click.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
But I learned so much about the program, the applications I was using for
Oh,
it.
I'm sure.
Because first I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't just like cut that part of the audio. How do I do this? I'm like, oh, there's very easy tools that would allow for this. It's just time consuming. Let's find it, fix it, go back and listen to it again, make sure it worked, and yeah,
Yeah. Wow. I'm sorry.
yeah, it's fine. It was good.
Stop clicking.
I know. I know. I'm like, I'm trying different things. See them all like, open your mouth, or don't move your tongue, or drink lots of water, or drink less water, and then I'm like, okay, still clicking.
That's amazing. I love it. So what else? I don't know. Do you have
Hmm.
other questions for me?
I think that's all the one. I mean, you kind of answered some of the ones I already had, like what was your inspiration behind writing the story? But you already kind of talked about, your own life and your own family and your son.
Yeah.
You want to just speak more towards, you know, people on the spectrum, and um, so. But you also wanted to write an MM romance. Like, what got you into that?
Honestly, it was just okay. So I wanted to write the character of Joe, and I'm like, well, my son is obviously male, and so like I don't really have the female perspective, and more people on the spectrum are male. So I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a male character, and so it was Joe, and so it's like I had him in my head, and then I'm like, if I make like Madden's character be like the stronger, nurturing character, and it's a female, kind of weird. It's like a mom relationship. You know what I mean? Like it's just weird. And then I was like, well, maybe then I can just make it a gay relationship and then like put that out there as well, because I know like there's a lot of gay relationships that end in happily ever after, and we don't always get to see that because there's so much that's out there that's just like not portrayed that way, right? And so then I just started like, you know, now I have two things to focus on and to like get out there into the world, and just the message of both. So that's kind of how it started, as both. And your dog agrees.
Yes. How long did it take you to write Stay?
The
Cooper.
original draft took me like 6 weeks. And then I had feedback from some good author friends of mine that write romance. And then I like rewrote the entire thing, because at first Joe's character wasn't so much on the spectrum, and it was kind of like, is he or isn't he? Because I wasn't like full on like, you know, this character has this, and it's like the whole book is going to be about this. And so my beta readers were like, you either need to do it or like not do it. And so I'm like, well, then I'm going for it. So then I had to add in a lot more, like just the nuances of his everything, like his touching his shirt hem, and I don't, just all of that stuff. So.
No, I think, I know for me, when I first started writing my first book, like I didn't purposefully try to write a fantasy book or make it, I mean, there's a gay romance going on in there, but I didn't, intentionally be like, okay, I want, these two guys to, get together. Like it just, I had an idea and a story. I knew the end of my book. That's what I wanted to write too. And it just kind of came out that way. So I can understand what you're kind of saying, where you have these concepts and characters, and you want to put them into, a scene or a story and craft something around it all. And then there's a product, and you're like, oh, it ended up being this. Do you need to make any changes in the way it flows to, make it better? But yeah.
Yeah. It was fun. It's been fun.
Any plans to bring Joe and Madden back to?
You know what? I feel so bad because everyone has asked me that, and I'm just like, no.
I want a spin-off story about the cat.
Right, Phantom. I'm just like, they have gone through so much. Why would I? If I'm gonna write a story, it's gonna have to have a plot, and it's gonna have to have like drama.
Type of problem.
If it's a romance, they're gonna have to break up for a while. I just want to put them through that.
They've already had, been through enough.
Yes. I'm like, just let them be. So no, I don't. I mean, I don't know. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, maybe I'll be bored and be like, they need like a kid or something. But
tell Adam's story.
Everyone keeps saying that too.
Tell Adam's story, and then Joe and Madden can pop in every once in a while and be like, hey, we're still here.
I think his voice in my head would drive me crazy. Honestly. But yeah, so I am writing an romance right now for a anthology. It's like a Egyptian gods thing, but it's dark, and I've never written, obviously, dark. So it's quite challenging.
Okay.
and scary.
So you're in the
And
middle of writing that right now?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be out in August, and I'm like terrified because I'm like, you've read what I've written. It's not dark.
No. I mean, there were some dark parts to stay. There were some dark scenes in there.
Well, yeah, it's history. But
Yeah.
I just, yeah, I'm like, oh, I guess I'll just kill this one because I need some dark. But I couldn't write, I don't think I could ever write fantasy because I need structure. Otherwise, I'd be like, I'd paint myself into a corner and then I'd be like, and then this giant purple elephant came and like blew fire onto everyone and killed them all. The end.
Save the day.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't do it. So good for you.
Thank you. So any other plans besides or after the this upcoming one in August?
Yes. I have plans for another one, sort of like Stay. It's like a contemporary romance, more like that. And one of the characters has or might have a disease.
We'll find out.
Wait and see. There's drama for sure.
Makes for a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. So should we wrap this up?
Sounds good. Ready for the weekend to start now?
I know, right? Actually, I can't really complain because my family's gone. My husband took my kids on a camping trip, so they come back tomorrow. I'm like, my freedom is over.
Yeah, boo weekend.
I know. I've missed them so much.
You're gonna miss that
Anyway.
client soon too.
It was so fun to meet you, like face to face.
Face to face and talking. So
Yeah. And thank you so much for all of your work and narration. It was so fun working with you.
and you as well.
Thank you. And when does your third book come out?
Third book, the last book in the Brass Machine series comes out on July 12th.
All right.
Yes, I'll be announcing
Exciting.
the title for it next week.
Okay. Something about Kermit.
Yep,
Kermit, King Kermit, something.
Kermit.
Yeah. Awesome. It's nowhere even close to that, I'm sure. All right. Well, everyone go by Stay by Ash Knight, narrated by Isaac Grisham. And leave us an awesome review. Thank you so much.
Happy Pride Month.
Yes, happy Pride Month. Thank you.